welcome to the third and final session of the May 2021 eAcademy. And so if you've just logged in, you're in for a treat. We're going to show you what's coming up in Accordance 13.2 for Windows and macOS. And you've got our head of development, Joel Brown himself, leading this session. Joel has been writing Accordance code for over a decade. He's now the lead software developer and has been instrumental in developing Accordance for Windows, Accordance for iOS 3.0, the upcoming Accordance version 13.2, and many more projects. Famously, Joel enjoys a good challenge, and many of Accordance's features have originated with a customer or colleague proposing something difficult yet fascinating. While not writing the best Bible software on the, I'm sorry, let me say that, let me reread that. When not writing the best Bible software on the planet, Joel is an avid musician performing trombone with the Orlando Philharmonic Orchestra or piano in his local congregation. So a couple of reminders for everyone. If you need to adjust the space between the video of Joel and his screen, there is a little bar in between there that you can grab, and you can make him quite small and you can make his screen quite large, or vice versa, however you want to do that. And also stay tuned at the end. We'll be talking about special discount codes just for attendees of our webinar today. So without any further ado, I turn it over to you, Joel.
All right, well, thank you very much, Rick. And a quick point of how I like to do these webinars is feel free to just send in your questions at any time. I've got both Rick, who you just heard, and Mark fielding those questions, and anything that they wanted to ping on to me, I'll just be pausing it every now and then, especially when I get to a big section break, and just seeing if there are any questions. So don't hold back, feel free to ask them as I do. I don't want you guys to get lost, and I always feel like I have a lot to cover. I also feel like I'm always going way too fast. So hopefully this will flesh out the time, and we got lots to talk about. And I'm just really excited to show this all to you. We've been working super duper hard prepping Accordance 13.2 for a long time now. And while hopefully at the end of today's session, you're going to be amazed and shocked and look at all these incredible new things, it's actually a really small subset of all the work we've been doing. We've also been doing huge amounts of under the hood work, keeping Accordance running fast and fluid and modern and multi-platform and all sorts of other stuff they're working on. So it is a huge upgrade, both from a visual front-end user experience perspective and a lot of really important back-end stuff from our side. So the one other minor point of order, Accordance 13.2 is not out yet, and I will not give you a date for that. We don't work that at Accordance. To quote, we release it when it's ready. But it will be a free update as long as you're a user of Accordance 13. So if you're still on 11 or 12, I highly recommend you get to version 13. And it has loads of new features. And 13.1 came out with new features. And 13.2 has all these new features I'm going to be showing today. And all those are all free for version 13 users. So be sure to update if you don't have it, 13 yet, and look for the 13.2 update whenever it's ready. It is currently in internal testing. We'll be going external testing hopefully soon. I don't like promising dates. So the first two things I want to talk about aren't that visual, but are very exciting. Number one is for Mac users. Number two is for Windows users, not in any particular order. Number one is Accordance 13.2 is a universal binary. It runs natively on the Apple Silicon architecture. That means your M1 chips, both the Mac Mini and the MacBooks, and the newly announced desktop. I think they still call it an iMac, but the new M1 chips that Apple's using to power the new desktops, it does run natively on that. For those of you that don't know how that works, if you take the current Accordance and load it up on your fancy new M1 machine, it will run, but it runs under Rosetta 2, which is an emulation layer, and that obviously makes things slower. Being native, it is fast. So right now, the machine I'm running on is not one of those. It's my development machine, a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and which is one of the fastest machines you can buy out now, right now. That's Intel. If you compare the speed, Apple's Mac Mini, the lowest end of the M1, is 50% faster than this machine when running natively. I mean, that's just how fast Apple's architecture. I promise not a plug for Apple. It's just I'm real excited that if you are one of the people who's working Apple Silicon, Accordance 13.2 runs great on it, and it is fast. So we're really excited to finally be making that public when it's available. And that's for Mac users. For Windows users, let's talk about the first big feature of Windows, which is our PDF import is massively redone. Basically, in Accordance 13.0 and 13.1, we're using some third-party libraries to help us with that PDF import, they never really did that good of a job, and we weren't happy with it. We really tried to do only grade A+ work here at Accordance. So we said, we just ripped all that code out and said, let's just do it all ourselves. And we have, in my opinion, one of the best PDF parsers on the planet in Accordance. Whoever who did that work is not going to hear me saying that because it's high expectations. I do think it's great. I do think it's smart. And right now, basically, you're going to get the same quality imports on both Mac and Windows. The Mac reader has also been improved a good bit. Windows is the one that's had massive improvements. I highly recommend you check it out. And as always, if you find something doesn't work, try to reach out to us and send us why. Now, I can't promise every single PDF will work. Some PDFs are literally just a picture you took with your phone of some text. That needs to be OCR, that doesn't have any text. Other PDFs are incredibly complicated newspaper layouts with 25 different columns of text, and it's not clear the layouting. We try our best, but generally, for most PDFs, I think it works, and it's going to work much better for Windows especially. All right, that being said, let's talk about the live features I can show you with my screen I've got up here. All of you are already seeing two of the first features I want to talk about, which are book titles and section headings. Very excited about both of these. They look related. I'm going to keep them separate for now because they're both really cool features, easy to understand, easy to use. I know a lot of you guys are going to think it's a no-brainer, but there are actually some important reasons why the book covers, the book titles and the section headings we haven't done yet. But I actually was reminded, I just talked about a couple of things. Are there any questions that I need to field from either the Universal app or the PDF stuff yet?
No, not yet. We've had several questions, but we were able to field them all.
Great.
Yeah, a couple that aren't related to what you're talking about right now, so I'll save them for later.
Okay, sounds good. So book titles are one of the big features, and I got a lot of features to go on here, so don't get too bored yet, are one of the big features in Accordance 13.2. And just since we have some time, since this is an eAcademy, we're here to learn, we're here to grow, so I'm going to take a little bit of time explaining how it works and how it'll work. When you pull up 13.2, you have to do nothing. Every one of your text is going to get a nice book divider at the start of every single book. It just comes in there, it works. What are the requirements to showing it? If I do a search for Adam, am I going to get a book title? No, okay, because it doesn't make sense. Why would I want to have a book title in the middle of Book of Genesis? So you get a book title if, Song, not Solomon. If you are in verses search up here, you're going to get a book title. Or if you're doing a word search, like searching for the word song, and you're showing all context, then you're also going to get a book title. So those are the two ways they get it. They do automatically come in. Don't fret if you don't like them, if you don't want them invading your text, you can always turn them off. All of you should be a good Experience Accordance users. If you don't, I did Command T to do set display. Command T is a very handy Control T for your Windows, very handy keyboard shortcut for almost every single display Accordance has, which says change how this works. For text, loads of options, including fonts, colors, and all that, but under advanced, there's my show book titles. So if you don't want your book titles or your pericope section headings, we'll get there in a second, but if you don't want your book titles, that's how you turn them off and they're gone, okay? Same thing in your preferences. If you don't want them anywhere, you can go to your preferences, advanced, show book titles, and turn them off everywhere. I like them on, I'm going to turn it back on. So I think it's really handy, lets us know how Genesis ends, where Exodus begins, etc., etc. It's styled to match your current display settings. So right now I'm using the default theme, and thus this font being used here, which I believe is Lato, Helvetica Neue, sorry, Helvetica Neue being used there in default theme is the one up here. If I happen to choose either a custom theme or a different theme like literature, then you see that the book title matches. So it's always going to pick up with whatever you're doing. If you're in night mode or you're in some sort of one of the darker themes like night sky, then again, it matches and keeps up with that. So it'll match whatever display choices you like, just with minor adjustments. Now, let's say that you're working in a text that has what we call native book names. Native book names are where instead of always showing the sort of the Western, Roman, Genesis, whatever names, we're actually going to use the book names associated with the text if they're different. So if we're in something like, let's say, a German text like Luther, let's see if I spelled that right, then the native book names are going to be the German titles. Okay, here using those book names to turn them off, and we get and it matches the native book names shown there. If you're in an original language text, Greek or Hebrew, and it has native book names, then even here, you get nice Greek titles at the top of everything. So it works real well. It looks real nice. Same thing with Hebrew. If I pull up my Hebrew text, here I can do the same thing here where it defaults to English only because I'm showing English here. If I like the idea of native book names, then it shows my native book names in Hebrew, and it's just a really cool, beautiful look as I work throughout the text. Only other thing I want to talk about this is considered an extra text. So you can't highlight it. You don't take notes on it. It's not something that's sort of part of the original text, it's something added. You see, if I try to select this text, I get my highlight controls and I can highlight that, no problem. Select this text, I get no highlight controls. You try to use the pen and try to make a highlight on this top section, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So don't be startled if you're trying to highlight it. If you do really need to make highlights in that type of information, you know, put it on the text over here, throw it on the notes, put it on the actual notes file. So for example, if I'm back to my ESV and I just pull open my little notes pane, maybe you want to put your highlighter or your comment or your note on there instead of actually on the text. But these are always added. These are not considered part of the text. And what's fun, by the way, since these come quote unquote for free, every text gets them. I can go to I've been showing you biblical text so far, but I could even go to other corpora, like I could go to, let's go here and let's go to, I don't know, my pseudepigrapha, and I see even cool titles of like Asher and, you know, Apocalypse, etc. And some of these looking a little technical. This is we're going to be doing some updates as it goes on to make some of these book names a little bit nicer. But it by default at least comes there. So I'm just wherever I am. I'm in the Qumran text, and even there, when I'm at different manuscript fragments, I know that here, and I'm at 1Q31. So it's just cool, handy. Book titles show up everywhere. But remember, if you don't like them, you can always turn them off under the advanced set text to display settings there, show book titles. Now, I want to go over those first because they cover a lot of the similar rules as our section headings, but are a little bit simpler to work with. So I'm going to quickly pause here. Any questions on book titles, Mark?
Yeah, there are. Do you get book titles with every version of a text?
Correct. Every single text gets book titles on it, whether I'm in ESV, whether I'm in my own personal imported, I have a Cotton Patch Gospel that I imported myself, it gets a book titles. Everything gets a book titles. The only thing is, if some of the titles seem a little bit technical, like you saw me earlier there, how I was in, what was that? I was in pseudepigrapha and we saw this little underscore here. So that didn't necessarily look great. We will be updating these to make them look better, but every single text, every single version gets book titles. And it just defaults on, and you can turn it off if you don't like it. You can turn off a preference if you want none of them to have it. Any other questions?
Yeah, here's one that related to PDF import. Will it try to recognize titles and heading levels?
Yes, it should. So it'll try to build up a table of contents. It'll try to separate out the paragraphs. It'll try to do its best with the formatting. But remember, PDF has no sense of logical structure. It's very important. People get frustrated with PDF. There's no sense of logical structure. Here, I'm reading this text and I see the word sermon, if I'm reading left to right, is clearly after the word a. Well, if I'm in a PDF, they may put the S here, and then an N there, and then an A there, and then an ARMO 3-letter word there. Like, I'm really serious. A PDF could easily encode it that way in a completely gibberish, nonsensical fashion. And it's up to your PDF parser to try to actually turn that into a logical structure, which means that the people are brilliant creatures, absolutely brilliant creatures. We don't really appreciate how brilliant we are until we try to replicate that brilliance. So for example, it's very obvious to me that, well, let's get off this underscore guy. It's very obvious to me that the word Matthew here is a title compared to that. But how did I come to that conclusion? It's a little bit of the fact that it's uppercase. It's a little bit of the fact that it's centered. It's a little bit of the fact that it's got a nice space, and it's a little bit of the fact that it's simply by itself and it's short. And all these things contribute to our mind agreeing, yeah, that's a title. Well, if you're programming that for computer, you have to make all those decisions for yourself, and that's just one of those things that's a little bit more arbitrary. So it is possible that if you have a PDF where the title's awfully similar to the content, it may miss them. But in general, if the title's pretty clear, yes, it'll bring it over, even give you a pretty decent table of contents. Any other questions?
Yep, one more. Will I be able to insert my own chapter summaries or titles?
For now, no. That's all I'll say. It's for now. The book titles come from the books. So if you're importing your own user Bible and your own Bible text, and you can even specify in the import Bible text, let's just pick a random thing, Armenian here. you can specify alternate book names. And I believe that these will then become the native book names. So you can have your own text with its own book titles in here, but it doesn't give you your own pericopes, your own section headings. We'll get to that in a second. That has to come from the publisher. And since right now you guys aren't actually publishers in Accordance's eyes, no offense if you're an actual publisher, you know what I mean, that's not something that's user editable for now. Any other questions?
Great. Nope, we're all caught up.
All right, so that's a really good segue. So we've talked about the section of the book titles. Let's now talk about the section headings here. Just like the book titles, these default on in the text. Just like the book titles, you can turn them off right here in the same preference right below it, show section headings. Just like the book titles, they only show up in your inverse mode or you're doing a search everywhere. So if I just display, let's go to the next title. If I just display right here, we have the seventh day God rests. If I just do Genesis chapter 2, I'll still get that, right? Even chapter 2:1, I'll get it because I'm still in verse mode. But if I search for heavens and earth, heavens and earth, right? I get the same verse, but no titles unless I slide up and I'm showing all context. And then I'll again get my section heading. So it's the same rules as book titles, got to be in verses mode or all context, and then you'll get your section headings. Now, unlike the book titles, section headings are a specific aspect to a published book, right? These aren't part of the original text. Well, whoever published this translation, in this case, English Standard Version and Crossway, they said, I'd like to title this section, The Creation of Man and Woman. So they specify that, and that's why you see that in almost all printed ESVs, and that's information they gave to us. So since we have that information, it's part of specifically the ESV text, and thus it is specifically inserted here. Which means, by the way, it's just replication publishers. Like you have an ebook, you're pulling exactly in what that publisher wanted. If I pull in something different, like let's say the NRSV, let's go right here, it has side by side its own set of titles. You see, NRSV editor decided to do a different version than the ESV editor. That's just a totally different choice, and that comes from that publisher. So this is not in every text. It has to be in a text where we both got the information from the publisher and have been able to incorporate it into our version via module update. I can tell you for right now, we've done at least 15 or 20, if not more of them. There may be more. I think we're still working through them. If you see it missing from a text, be sure to go do a check for content updates and make sure you're not missing any updates from any of the notes files. I probably have some updates here already. Let's see here that I haven't even done. I'm not going to do them on live, but here's some updates. And here's one of them. Here's some of the notes files for German and Polish text that I haven't updated. So these ones may be missing or may be incorrect. I need to update them. But anyway, that's the idea. Go to your check for updates. Make sure you're fully up to date with all your text and tools. And then once you're running 13.2, you're going to get your section headings in there. Now, section headings are pretty cool from a couple other ways. Okay, so again, if it's a text that doesn't have a publisher, like again, my own personal Compact Gospel, you're not going to get any section headings. If it's your own user Bible, for now, no section headings. We may improve this all in the future, but that's sort of how it's working right now. For the stuff that does come from publisher that we've updated, you get your section headings, and it works really, really well. Just as I said, or already said, just like the book titles, this is extra content, so you can't highlight it, you can't mark it up, and of course, it's optional, you can remove it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the other very key aspect to section headings is you can search them. And this is pretty important, right? Searching by book titles sort of meaningless, right? I can just search by the book. That's not teaching me anything. But what if I want to find every section heading and say here, that has the word friends. Headings, friends, found it. Job's 3 friends, Elihu rejects the friends, keep on going through different things. Daniel's friends promoted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one thing that's really important about this is extra text, which means I've done a search, but the intrepid viewer here, I have 0 search results. I have no analytics because analytics work on the actual text. I didn't search the NRSV words for the words friends. Now I got analytics. I search for section headings that are added. They're added. We don't try to analyze them. That means if you do a star search, you try to search for everything, your results aren't going to be skewed by whatever else the publisher has added in the text. The search here is for easy jumping filtering. And when you search for a section heading, your results give you all of the verses associated in that section. So you see here, my results are not contiguous. I'm in Job 2, last verse, verse 13. And then I next start up with Elihu rebuking the friends, Job 32. So it displayed the entire section heading, Job's 3 friends, and then it'll display the entire section heading, Elihu rebukes Job's friends, for example. You see how that works? I think it works really well. I think it works pretty intuitively, but it's sort of good to explain how that works. Now, this search is not a dumb search. It is actually a pretty cool search. I can search for anything that, let's see, has the word list works, by the way. So the words you see there in the quick entry, these are the words that are in the section headings here. So for example, I can go to Judith here and find the headings up to Judith. Wildcards work. I can do any section heading starting JUD, got judgment here. I can even do and, so I can do judgment and Sodom, and that'll probably just give me this one, and that's it. But you see, some basic stuff works. Not everything works. So for example, I can't do the hits command in here. I can't do the merge command, the count command. There are a couple things that don't work, but your basic wildcard searching, word list type stuff, and even the word list, I'm pretty sure works. I may have got that wrong actually. Let's see, what happens if I search for junk? Yeah, I do get it, and it's actually telling me I'm bringing in words from the section headings of NRSV notes, so I can see, let's bring in and find every headings for Sariah, for example. So that's how the searching works. I do think it works well. Really handy way when you know something's talking about something, even if it's not actually there. So for example, I can search for creation and get the 6 days of creation, even if the actual word creation, unless I'm searching flex, isn't found until 2.3. I got that opening passage because that's how the section heading talked about it. So it's pretty cool. That's how the section heading works. Now that does let me segue into a minor interface change that I want to talk about here. But before I talk about the interface change, are there any questions about these section headings?
Yes, few of them. So when you copy section headings, will it leave out the topics that Accordance has added?
If you copy on a verse level, so if I copy, copy works with what you've selected. If I select this and copy it, I'm going to get those contents, right? Because I copied little text here, so I copy little text. If I copy as citation, I'm pretty sure though, because that's actually trying to cite something, it doesn't include it. Yep. So a plain Command C always copies whatever's on the screen, but a copy as citation, if I have a selection, a copy as citation will strip anything that's extra. That's why it strips references and then reformats it based on your, citation preferences, and will also not include the extra contents. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, and how do section headings and book headings work in non-biblical texts like the Quran?
So the Quran, book headings, like I said, they come in everywhere. If I pull up my Quran here, this is an interesting one because in this English translation of the Quran, the publisher provided section headings. And Mark, I think you do the updates. This has been updated and haven't grabbed the latest update. But I'm not gonna do it live. So we get the book headings because every text, even Quran tagged, gets a book headings. And I don't think this one has native book names, does it? No, it does not. So it's always going to be Q1 like that. But section headings have to come from the publisher. And if I remember correctly, our only Quran text that has section headings is the Droge, I apologize, English translation that does include them. So again, all texts get book titles, but we have to have gotten section headings from the publisher to include them. Now, aside from that, remember, if it's at least biblical, you always still get the section heading in the info pane over here. And basically, if the publisher gave us the section headings, we show the publisher section headings here. If it's something, keep going back to my Cotton Patch Gospel, that doesn't have section headings, then it's going to go back to the default set from our internal set of pericopes. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, great. How about verse 0 in the Psalter? In English, initial text like a Psalm of David gets treated oftentimes as subheading.
So that's a really good question, and actually I was going to demonstrate that, so thank you for reminding me to demonstrate that. So section headings, the format of these, just like the format of the book titles, match your choices to some extent, right? I've chosen Helvetica New here, and I get Helvetica New here. If I switch, let's customize my theme and switch to something crazy like Herculeanum, I get the same thing here. And you see the section heading updated as well. But there are some exceptions. It'll grab your color, it'll grab your font, and it'll relatively grab the size as I go up and down. But obviously, it's always going to make, let me get out of this font, this dated font. It'll always, sorry, not traditional Helvetica, oh, I was on light, that's what it was. Oh, it's good light. Sorry about that. It'll always make it all caps. It'll always make it bigger. Just like this one is always italicized. So the question is, why is this italicized? Well, again, that was a publisher's choice. If I open something like a Spanish text, LBLA, not only do I get those publisher choices, but here the publisher wanted them to be bold and centered. So they respect that choice of now being bold and centered, la creación. So you sort of see how that works. We get those choices from the publisher while the font still matches whatever I choose. If I choose a horrible impact font, it still matches impact font. So that's sort of how those choices work. Now that means, let's close this. That means if the publisher varied it, we'll pick up those variations. Let's check out the Book of Psalms here. In here, the publisher provided both the book heading and the name of each of the psalms, where the book heading is bold and all caps and centered, while then the psalm descriptions are italicized over there. So we do maintain multiple choices, even if those are there. Now, that again, that depends on here. Most English texts include the verse 0 as part of the text. So that hasn't moved to the section heading section. That's just most English Bibles do consider those psalm preludes as part of the text. But so I don't think that'll affect that case. One interesting place is if you go to the Book of Solomon, Song of Solomon, here NRSV didn't do this, but ESV, pull up right here. Nope. So this is a really good example here. The CSB here, they include, even if I do the later CSB, where is it? Here we are, the 2017. They include the writer, I believe, is part of the text. Maybe it's a section heading added. Actually, that's a good question. Sorry, I didn't prep this. Let's see here. Okay, so good. So the new CSB is treating it like the ESV does, where the name of the speaker, which the editor is guessing based on the grammar and all that, not to get too much into the theology of it, they then add into the text to help assist the reader in who's speaking at the time. That's another example of how the section headings got used. But also you see then the format and sort of matches what it is. Here they wanted it bold, here they wanted all caps, italicized, et cetera, et cetera. I hope that answers that question. Are there any other questions, Mark?
Yes. Will these headings appear in a research search?
Yes, I believe. If you're doing a research search for verses, I actually haven't tested that. It may break. Let's see here. Genesis 1. And, oh, here it didn't bring it in. Interesting. All right. It probably should. So we'll add that. Yeah, probably they should show up here for researchers. That's a great thing. We'll be adding them in here later for research. They don't right now, but they should. So they will.
And will titles and pericopes eventually be available on iOS as well?
Absolutely, yes. iOS and Android, both of these are features that we want to bring out to the mobile platform, but unfortunately can't give it time yet. iOS will undoubtedly be sooner than Android, but yeah, absolutely, these are going to make it to mobile platforms. And of course, they're ready here on Windows.
Great, all caught up on the questions.
Fantastic. So moving past the visuals of this, I do want to talk about a minor interface change. And this is going to really grind the gears of our very, very, very long time accordance users. Ever since version 1.0 of accordance 27 years ago, command semicolon has switched between verses and words modes. So if I'm in verses mode and I'm doing the book of Job, and then nope, I wanted words mode, I do command semicolon, it switches to words, and then I do the word Job. Okay, I apologize, that is finally changing. So all you old people come back and throw cans at me or whatever you want to do. We're not going to be doing command semicolon to guaranteed switch words to verses. Now command semicolon is going to work how it works everywhere else in the program, where it'll cycle through your menu. So words, verses, headings, flex, words, verses, headings, flex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It'll always cycle through your menu exactly as you do, which by the way is exactly how it was working in a tool. Like here I'm in Anchor, Entry, English Content, Scripture, Bibliography, Author, it just keeps cycling through there. The reason we did this is because when we added this new headings mode, it started getting really confusing. If I'm in headings mode and I hit command semicolon, where should I go? Do I go to flex? because that happened to be flex last? Do I go to words because I didn't have to be flex last? Do I go to verses because this is actually really more of a words mode? And when I'm in verses, what if I actually want to commit semicolon down to headings? It's simply not an option, right? So it is causing too many problems. I know it's a change and I apologize, but I do think it's intuitive and it makes sense. And I will remind you, the automatic switch still works. If I'm in words and I type Matthew 1:2, it'll automatically switch to verses. And then if I search for the word Moses, it'll automatically switch to words. So that automatic switch still works. But if you're depending on command semicolon, now it cycles a whole menu, whatever's available. So if we're somewhere that doesn't have flex, like for example, if I'm in a Greek text, here I still only have 2 because the Septuagint doesn't have section headings and it doesn't support flex because it's Greek. So here command semicolon sort of works the same. I hope that makes sense. I apologize for the change. I do think it's a change for the better, but it will be a little bit of a learning curve for those that are really, really used to that command semicolon in 13 prior to this. Okay. If there aren't any other questions right now, I'm going to move on to the next feature. I got still loads to cover and already halfway done with my time at least. Next feature. Yeah. Oh yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say no more questions. You're good to go.
Great. Okay, next feature is another improvement to the Command T option, default tool. Now you can, on a text by text level, decide what you want your default tool to be. This setting will affect your triple click and your expanded instant details option, which on desktop is done by holding the command key. So let me demonstrate. I'm in Greek because that's one of the easier, more useful ways, but there are other advantages to this. So I have my Septuagint and my New Testament open side by side, okay? And if I go to my preferences, my amplify for Greek is set to BDAG. Okay, that means that most of the time, unless I override it, unless I'd use this new feature, triple click is going to take me to BDAG, my preferred Greek lexicon. Okay, and again, it works. There's genau. Okay, but I recognize now, using the new 13.2 feature, that the grammar and syntax and whatever of the Septuagint is different enough where I don't want to go to BDAG. I want to go to the dedicated Septuagint lexicon LEH. So I've set that in my Command T and I clicked Use the Default. So always my Septuagint will go to LEH instead of BDAG, and it just works as you expect. So real easy, real straightforward. Now, obviously, even though there's a lot of similarity between this dialog and the preferences, obviously that doesn't exist on the preference dialog. Like that's just something that doesn't make sense. You don't need to have that here on the preferences dialog because it's not there. And if you ever change your mind, you can always just go back here and switch LEH back to default. There's my first one, which means use whatever the default triple click is. But it also, I did cancel, by the way. So for those shocked here, I did cancel. So LEH, and if I go to my instant details, you can see if I make this bigger, Septuagint's bringing in LEH2. NA28 is bringing in BDAG. Cool feature. It's not limited to any specific Greek text. Maybe you want one Hebrew text, like you're working in Biblical Hebrew, to go to Halot, and then you're working in Qumran, and you want that to go to DCH, for example, Klein's Dignity Classical Hebrew. Maybe you're in English, and you want my ESV. Yeah, I like that guy going to one place, but then where's that? I want like that guy going to Anchor, but maybe for ESV, I want it to actually be different from my normal triple click, and I want to go to the photo guide Egypt, so that here I can pull in, I don't know, darkness or something that's there, and oop, the little bug fix there. But anyway, I'm just playing around here. But that's the idea, is that you can do it on any feature, any language, any option, no problem at all. Just go to Command T or Control T in Windows, and you can override the default tool, or if you're done, set it back to default. It's a pretty simple thing. There are a couple technical reasons why we had to wait until now to get it done. We're really excited about it. So fun little feature. I'm going to change gears a little bit. So any questions, Mark?
Let's see. Will this feature work with live click as well?
Live click, that's a good question here. So live click normally goes, I haven't tried that. So I like working with you guys on this. All right. So Septuagint, let's do a live click on Word. And I'm sorry, I was testing. I'm in a subgroup for live click. Let's go back to live click. Let's go back to the current book here, and lexicon lookup is really what you're asking about. Let's do a lexicon lookup from here. And so the live click already doesn't care. That's the answer. Sorry, it's been a little bit since I've done this. Live click doesn't care. When it does a search, it is searching all of your lexicons. So it doesn't really matter which one is first. And I don't think there's any sorting way to try to put your triple click default to that. So that's why that's the triple click and the instant details and this whole default tool, that's specifically going to one tool. What makes live click so powerful is it goes to all of your tools with a simple click. So no, it doesn't apply to live click because live click already doesn't care about that. BDAG is ranked high because it's just ranked high here, and LEH is already right there. Any other questions?
Awesome. No, just a reminder that if you could, when you mention using something like the command key, some Windows users aren't exactly sure what you're talking about.
Sorry, when I say command, I generally mean control. So yeah, instant details, I would press control on Windows to go to my expanded lookup that you see here at the bottom here has analytics and a dictionary lexicon lookup here. So sorry, thank you for the reminder, Mark.
Sure, no problem. That's it for the questions.
Next feature, cross-highlighting. To me, one of the coolest features of Accordance because it means that if I have parallel panes open, let's go to CSB, then I can cross-highlight using a variety of forms. English will use key numbers. If I'm in say a Greek text, let's say here NA28, and then I want to pull open, let's say, one of my manuscripts, like Sinaiticus, it'll work like that. Cool little feature. MTLXX works, so I'm here ESV, and I can add my Septuagint and my Hebrew, and then you can see even here I'm getting it cross-highlighting across all three. Really cool feature. Love cross-highlighting. If you haven't used it before, make sure all you have to do is mouse over or tap if you're on iOS. I don't think Android has it yet, and you can of course customize it here under Instant Details, Source, and cross-highlighting. Anyway. Cross-highlighting's already been there, already working, okay? Cross-highlighting now works to tied tabs, which means, let's say I'm in my live click, and I'm using my text browser to pull up a verse. So I'm working here, I see Genesis 1:14, and I want to click to grab my text browser. It automatically tied the two. You guys see these icons here? This means they're tied, which means that if it's a text tab, which most of the time is a text tab. That means that as you scroll, they stay in sync. Text browsers only show one verse at a time, so as you scroll, it changes what that verse is. You see I'm in 17. Cross-highlighting now works across ties as well. So this is really cool if you're a big live click or text browser user, that you can actually get cross-highlighting between your text browser and any text. It also means in case I have, for whatever reason, I want to have different text windows. So I have my ESV, and then I want to pull open, let's say in another window, my Hebrew text. Separate tab, maybe even a separate workspace. It'll still cross-highlight across if, what I miss, if they are tied. Then I'm not on the same verse. So now that I tied to sync them together, and now cross highlights across. So cool little feature, really handy for live click. Since you guys are here for eAcademy, I'm going to give you a fun pro tip. Okay, so let's look at this case. I've got my ESV, I've got my Septuagint, I've got my Hebrew text, and very cool, I can cross highlight between the three. If I were to close my Hebrew pane, I lose my Septuagint cross highlighting. Oh no, there's a bug. It's not a bug, it's an implementation detail. It's an unfortunate thing that basically the logic is that ESV knows how to go to Hebrew, and then Hebrew knows how to go to Septuagint, so we can connect them all together. The problem is ESV doesn't know how to go to Septuagint. If I don't have a Hebrew open, ESV could go to any number of texts. How do I know that you actually want to use Hebrew? If we tried to have it go to every single text in the library, desperately hoping we find one that can go to Septuagint, it'll actually make it really slow and problematic, and it's not a good solution. So that's why you don't get anything here. But, pro tip, here's a life hack, an Accordance life hack. All you have to do, let's say you don't even want to read the Hebrew text. Just open Hebrew text in the background, even move it. Attach the tab. I'm even going to tie it, and I'm just going to hide this whole window. Say, I don't want this stupid Hebrew text. Sorry, I'm not saying stupid Hebrew text, but I'm just going to hide this window. And now it works because my ESV is seeing that tie, connecting to my invisible, hidden, don't care about it Hebrew text, and then it can use that to bring me back to the Septuagint. So it's actually a really cool sort of a trick you can do in 13.2. If you want to do that double cross highlighting, right, going ESV to something else to the Septuagint without having to keep that Hebrew text on your screen. Fun little pro tip. Hope you guys like it. I'm going to go on to a new other exciting feature unless there are any questions, Mark.
No questions yet.
All right, next big feature, we have completely in 13.2 revamped our find and replace dialog. It looks nicer, it works better. works in every tab, I think. Probably the good beta tester will find a random tab it doesn't work in. Generally works in every single tab, which means I'm here and I want to find blessed, and blessed, and there it is. Okay, really cool, really fancy. I like it a lot. It's very easy. Control F if you're on Windows, Command F if you're on Mac, right here under the search menu, and it works easily as you expect here. And it works on text, it works on tools, it works across languages. So if I'm here in Septuagint, let me turn off that live click. I'm here in my Septuagint, and I want to do a search. I'm in Greek, and I can search for theos, and it'll ignore diacritics. Aha, important detail. I have to ignore the diacritics. I did not type the accent over the omicron, so it missed it unless I said to ignore diacritics. So that's a good segue. You see it's got these important features. Whole words, let's go back to English so that everybody can follow along. Whole words means if I search for create, it will not find created, because it has to be a whole word by itself. I get no options. If I take off whole words, now I'd find create inside of created. Case sensitive works as you expect here. If I'm searching for lowercase g God, case sensitive is not going to find it here. Take it off and I find it. Okay, so these work as you expect. Diacritics work as you expect. That's everything that's not a big chunky letter. So if I'm in Greek, let's pull up my Septuagint again here, that means everything except the accents. If I'm in Hebrew, that means ignoring cannellation and vowel pointing. So I can go here and I can search for Elohim. So I am there. And ignoring diacritics, I'll find Elohim even if it has that. So what's cool is I can copy this, paste it in, right? Or Command E, I'll get to that in a second. And I can find everywhere it is, ignoring diacritics. You guys see how the diacritics are different? Here we have a different text than that. You see, it's a little bit different in our Hebrew text there. If I don't ignore diacritics, it's not going to find the example that was missing that character. So ignore diacritics is very important. Ignore superscripts is exactly as you expect. Ignore footnotes. So if I'm, let's say in my ESV, and I want to search for a phrase like man in our image, I'm going to want to turn on ignore superscripts so I can find it. Now, let's talk about a couple of the other details about this. Number one, very important. I'm glad you guys are all here for the webinar. Very, 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 very important. Cannot emphasize enough. Find only searches the immediate context. It does not search the entire massive thing you may be viewing. If I'm in the ESV and I'm in Genesis 1 and I do a search for something that's not going to occur for a long time, like Jesus, it's not going to find it. Do not come crawling to me, sending me emails saying, Joel, your program's buggy because you didn't find Jesus. I know it's in the Bible. Find only searches what I'm displaying, give or take, in the text. So it is done as I've done a search here, like for Jesus, that works. And then within my results, I want to see where was Mary. That's where it's handy for. It's searching within what you're displaying on the screen. It is not searching the entire text, and a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to go into them right now because I'm running out of time, but it searches what you see on the screen. That's the first very, very important detail about the find. Replace, by the way, only works if you can edit the text. So in all my text and all my tools that I can't edit, replace does nothing. This is only for user notes, user tools, and papers where you can actually replace content like that. That's the first thing. Second thing is it handles languages pretty cool, okay? Check it out. To the left of every box is a little icon. The first one is the world icon, which means default, which means what you type on your keyboard is what you get. I type an M, I get an M. I switch my keyboard to Hebrew, I type an M, I get a mem. Right? I type an A, I get an aleph, et cetera, et cetera. It's just literally whatever you type on here. Okay, and yes, there's a little bug you guys just found. If I switch to Greek, though, here's very handy. I don't have to switch keyboards. It'll know I'm trying to go to Greek, which means if I type an A, I get an alpha. If I type a B, I get a beta. Type a G, I get a gamma, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing for Hebrew. I can then type a B and get a bait instead of that. So it's a way to be able to switch languages just like we're already doing in user notes and user tools and papers, but it's a really handy thing here. And it'll automatically switch based on what text you're in. So if I'm working in my Greek and I hit Command F, it doesn't matter what was there, it'll switch to Greek so I can immediately type in Greek characters and find, ignore diacritics. There we go. Whoa, Theos is in the Bible. What happened to God? No, God just isn't in Matthew 1:1-6 because it's later in the text here. So here I can search for Biblos and it'll find it, right? Okay, so that's the next important thing. All right, next feature on the find. Now I've got a lot here, and I'll pause for questions in just a second. Command E Control E if you're on Windows is your friend. If you're used to it on the Mac, in a lot of programs, Command E means take my selection and pop it in my find box. That's what Command E means. Control, there isn't a standard, some Windows programs do it, but there's not a standard. Mac is sort of standardized around Command E. On Windows, it is still Control E, but it does the same thing. So I'm working my text. Look how cool this is. I'm working my text. I see a word. I can select it, Command E, Control E if you're Windows, and then Command G, Control G if you're Windows, see if that text occurs anywhere else in my media context. It's not highlighting anything, it's just wrapping around and finding where I was right here. While if I pick Theon, there's the other uses of Theon on my screen, just by doing a quick Command E, Command G, cycling through my text. Real handy, cool thing. By the way, if you're on Windows and you're really used to using the F3, all the standard Windows F3 and Shift F3 and all that work just like you expect, as well as the standard Mac ones, Command G, Shift, Command G, and all that. So really cool thing. Final little feature, if you're on a Mac, and I apologize, I'm not discriminating against Windows, usually literally the feature does not exist on Windows, the Mac has this thing called a shared find, where I can take text, put it in my find box on one program, then go to another program like TextEdit, and there it is. Same thing here. If I do a search for hello here, if I were to go back to the Accordance find box, it actually updated to hello. So it's a shared find between Mac programs, which is pretty cool. I'm happy to implement it on Windows if it exists. As far as I know, it doesn't exist. Okay, that's a lot. Find's really cool. It works exactly as you expect. I hope it's real intuitive. What questions do we have for Find?
Okay, we've got one so far. Can that search work for roots or only for lexemes if you're...
Okay, that's a good question because it helps clarify something. When you're searching a text, you're searching in whatever fancy way you want. So I can search for words. I can search for, I don't know, agapao by lexical form. I can search for agapao by inflected form, which guess what, doesn't exist, right? I have to search for one of them like agapan, right? Or I can search for root. What's root here? Agape. I can search for root, right? So you have all those different ways to search the text. If you're using Command F, it doesn't care what you're showing on the screen. It is literally searching the characters that are there. So it's not going to search for by lexical form. It's not going to search by root form. It's literally just searching the characters as they are on the screen. Always going to be inflected, basically, is to answer your question.
Okay, and these questions go back to some earlier things you were talking about. One is actually a suggestion related to searching for section headings. If you could put a button down where it says verse, chapter, book, that have at the bottom left, to add an up and down arrow for headings to be able to navigate that way. This user says that would be really cool.
Idea. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And here's another one related to that hack you were talking about with cross-highlighting. My daily reading workspace has a text browser parallel tab open, tied to my main reading tab. Is that enough to tie the ESV to the Septuagint?
Yeah, as long as it is tied, to the Septuagint, your text browser, I think, would have to have a Hebrew text showing. So let's do an example here. That's a really good question here. If I have this, and I open another text browser tab here, I have Hebrew here. Oh, and I have to tie it. I have to tie it. If you live click, it ties automatically. Yeah, there you go. So it found my Hebrew in here in my text browser, and then used that Hebrew to connect back over here. So as long as you have a Hebrew text showing in your text browser, that would be sufficient. But it does have to be showing there.
Great. And going back to what you were actually talking about just now, could you repeat what the find and replace shortcut keys are again?
If you're on a Mac, it's Command F, Command G, Shift Command G to go backwards, and Command E to take that selection and pop it in the box. I believe all of these work on Windows, but Windows, it's also standard that F3 is is the equivalent to Command G. So on Windows, you'd go Control F, type your word like Adam, and then you'd go F3, 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 F3 to find all the locations, and that also works in Shift F3 to go backwards. And by the way, if you know of a standard Windows, by the Windows users out there, I think I grabbed the quote unquote standard ones, but if you find that, hey, here's this Windows find shortcut that everybody uses and Accordance missed it, please let somebody know and they'll pass it on to me, or let me know directly if you can. And one more thing on the find before I move on, as I'm rapidly burning through my time. Find works multi-language. So let's say I go to something cool like I mean, everything's pretty cool that I'm doing here, but if I go to BDAG, which is also cool, I can search for something like interchanged with agenese, right? If I do Command E, take a look. I got my English and my Greek together, and the search works. So you're not limited to just one language at a time up in this box. It'll match whatever you do, or you can type it yourself, because this Unicode box supports anything up here. And of course, yes, it does work in Unicode as well. All right, moving on past find and replace, I'm going to talk about one of the last biggest features. There are some of the small things I'm going to talk about if I still have time, but one of the last biggest features, it is mainly for our Hebrew users, and it has to do with a completely updated literal search. Pausing for applause from our Hebrew searchers. So for those of you that are not familiar with that, we've had for a while now a letters mode in Hebrew. And what that letters mode means is when you see words, even if grammatically, you may parse them differently. So for example, this bait represents the English in, it's the preposition. And then the rest of the letters, reshit means beginning. So you actually have to put them together. You actually make a phrase in the beginning. They're different grammatical elements, they're different grammatical forms, but Hebrew connects them together into one graphical element. Now, for many, many, many years, accordance historically says, well, they're different words, they're different grammatically, we just treat them separately, okay? But for a lot of people, especially our BibleWorks users coming over, or if you're a native Hebrew speaker, you still think of Bereshit as a single word, and you want to be able to search for the word Bereshit, regardless of whatever the fancy hodgepodge scholars want to interpret it separately. Bereshit's one word, right? So that's what we came up with the literal search. But to be frank, the literal search we've had in accordance for a good number of years now is a bit of a hack, bit of a not a very good hack, where it would work, but it has all sorts of restrictions. It's not very fast, and you can't use it with wildcards, you can't use it with search commands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We finally have fixed it, okay? If you're running version 13.2 and got to make sure you update. You have to do check for content updates and get the latest version of the Hebrew text, which is not available yet. If you get the latest versions of our Hebrew text that will be putting out those updates after 13.2 goes live, they will include a revamped letters searching that works every complete way, I believe, that you expect it to, like a lexical search works, like an inflected search works. Let me demonstrate, okay? First of all, and one of the ways you know that it's working is if you go to your letters search and go up to the search menu, if it's working, you're actually going to see enter letter forms. Anybody following along on their computer right now is not going to get this option because this only exists on the new version of accordance with the updated Hebrew text. If you get that, though, you'll see what we're talking about. How here's my bara, but here's also Bereshit here. See here, there, Bereshit as one word in this box. It's not split up. And of course, I can search for it as one word, and of course it works. But of course, this isn't new. You could have done this type of a combined letter search before. Now, what if I want to find every literal word, every graphical unit where all the words are together that starts with a bait and ends with a taf? Okay, I can now do this. You couldn't do this before. Let's go to the equal sign here. I don't want exact. You could do this before, where I found both here combined words where they started with the bait prefix but ended with a taf, but it's still one graphical unit. But here's an example where it has also one grammatical form. So it doesn't really care whether or not you would structurally analyze it as two words. You guys see my cross highlight in here, or structurally analyze it as one word. You asked for what written words begin with a bait, end with a taf, because I'm in letters mode and it works. So it's pretty cool. Now, I'm not done though. It also works with commands and wildcards and everything. Before, if I wanted to do Bereshit as a word within, actually, let's do a better word. Let's do Elohim within, now let's count. How many words away is Haaretz from Elohim? Okay, well, that's a really good question. If you were in the old way, Elohim is one word, two words, the hay's different, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words away from Aretz, counting that way, because you'd be counting every grammatical form differently. But in letters mode, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4 words away, and thus within a 4 should find it. So you see, within counts the letters as a direct forms as you expect. So again, if you're looking for adjacent forms, you don't want to be concerned by whether or not there was a prefix or suffix in the way. It's no longer an issue. You're counting the literal words as you expect them to be. Same thing with grammatical tags, search commands, all of these work. Grammatical tags get a little funny though, and this is actually where it gets pretty cool. Let's take a look. Consider again Bereshit. Remember what I said, it's two separate words. It's a bait, which as you see in my instant details at the bottom, this is a particle, this is a preposition, combined with Reshit, beginning, which is a noun. Two different grammatical parsings. Which is it, right? If I'm in letters mode and I do Bereshit, okay, find my word. If I want to combine that and limit that, which is it? Is it a particle? Yes. Is it a noun? Yes. Is it both? Yes, it's both. I can actually find all particles that are in the same graphical unit combined with a noun. Now, this is a nonsensical search if I were to be in words mode, because words mode means that these are different words. You can't have different grammatical words or the same grammatical word have two different grammatical parts. It doesn't make sense, right? But here, I'm looking for a single graphical element that contains both a particle and a noun in their graphical element. And of course, it works. In fact, I found lots of cases. Here's how Shemaim, here's how Arts. All of these cases work because it's a single graphical using, not a computer graphics, using the sense of written together, a single written together word that includes both a particle and a noun. This, by the way, does work in the construct. It does work with other forms. If you ever want, actually, I'm not going to. So if I'm in a construct, I can do the same thing. I can have my Hebrew construct, and I can search for a particle and a noun that are the same word, and this should give me the same, if not very similar, results here. So actually, I think this is going to give me an OR search. I forget the details. Construct's a little bit dicey. Yeah, this gave me an OR search. I think what I have to do is I have to put a lex in between. I actually forget how we implemented this. I apologize. Let's just search for the lexical form. Oh, okay. You can do the letter search. Here we go. If I do the letter search and I just do any star search, I think that'll fix it. I should have tested this more, but I do know it works in the construct. And basically, how the construct works is either if you specify you're searching letters, or if it's linking to something that says letters, then it will limit it as you expect. And I forget, somewhere, there's some like order of operation that I think I have to do in order to get this, but I forget the details of this. Trust me, it works, and I'm gonna have to work with Mark to get the help documentation on that. But anyway, I think it works really well. It does work very intuitively and just sort of as you expect, where if you're in words mode, that still means old grammatical words. If you're in letters mode now, and you have the updated text and updated accordance, now this is all one single letter. Okay, I know that was a lot. I know that some of you aren't necessarily strongest in Hebrew. Do I have any questions on the updated Hebrew literal search?
We don't have any questions on that, but we have a lot of wows and amazings, and a lot of people are very happy.
Cool. All right, well, I got a couple more minutes until I have to go to official question time, so let me go and use it and talk about some more of the more minor features in here I'm still excited about. Okay, first one is, and this is actually a good demo for those that have forgotten how this all works. Let's say I have a text open. Let's make this a little bit bigger. ESV that's displaying the entire sort of Western Bible as we're Old Testament, New Testament, no Apocrypha, right? And I put in parallel my Hebrew text, okay? Well, this is how I like to think about it. This Hebrew text is not sufficient to fully display the ESV. And I'm not speaking any sort of theological thing. I'm saying that the Hebrew text obviously is only the Old Testament. It doesn't include the book of Matthew, right? So whenever you're in a case where a pane is insufficient to display all the requested books, all the books that we're trying to display here, you get this handy dandy little icon. And this handy dandy little icon says, I want to attach an alternate text. That lets me switch back and forth. So I'm in Old Testament, I get Hebrew, I go to New Testament, I get Greek. Very fancy. It's not a new feature, but just showing you that's how it works. And to me, that's the logic. Can I display everything? If I can, no need to display the icon. If I can't, let's display the icon and give you a choice for what you want to add in. What's new, a couple different things. First of all, now you can add more than one. So let's say I'm working in Ralph's, for example. It's a little bit more technical. I'm working in Ralph's, and I want to add my Göttingen in here. So let's go to my Septuagint, and I add my Göttingen Pentateuch. All right, but then you're beyond the Pentateuch, okay, working just fine up here, but I also realize there have been multiple Göttingen texts. I can actually add Göttingen Esdras, I can add Göttingen Ezekiel, I can add Göttingen Jeremiah and Job and all these, so that, and I keep having to move this in my way, my scroll bar, just move this slightly, so that as I scroll through, here I'm in Pentateuch, okay, but then I get to first Esdras, that volume of Göttingen switches in, and then I get to somewhere I was in Isaiah, I think I added, and maybe Job, I forget all that I added here. There we go. Ezekiel I added, and then it automatically switches between them. Jeremiah I added, so now it'll switch between more than one. Pretty cool, pretty handy. There aren't that many cases where you need multiple texts to do it. You may have it if you're importing user text. You may have it in the case of BHQ or Göttingen, since those are released volume by volume. You may have it if you simply want a different apocryphal text from your Old Testament text from your New Testament text. That's another example for that. And of course, all of these sets of combined texts can all be saved and then loaded later or added directly under Add Parallel here. So that's a fun little feature. Where that leads to, one more thing I'm going to say before I open for questions, is another new capability of modules, that now we can have a module that goes multi-corpus. What I mean by that is how we use the word corpus is a set, codified set of books. So there is the most common one we're all probably dealing with, the biblical corpus. There's a Dead Sea Scroll corpus. There's a Quran corpus. There's an Apostolic Fathers corpus. There's a Josephus and a Philo corpus. These are different set of books that don't have the same sense of books and chapters. They don't line up verse by verse, right? These are all different corpuses. Well, what if you get to a tricky text like Sweet Septuagint? And there are other reasons why I'm going to get to this. If you're in Sweet Septuagint, wherever it is, Septuagint Sweet, you may even seen it there. Sweet's manuscript includes the book of Enoch that is generally not considered in the biblical corpus. Now, Accordance couldn't display those together, so we had to put a separate module. That's actually not the case. I'm running an updated Enoch, updated Sweet that includes the book of Enoch at the end, because that's what the Greek manuscript does. And what that means is I can add parallel either biblical texts or, below my divider line, pseudepigraphal texts. And just like I was showing off in the add parallel, the same logic applies. If I add a biblical text, like even Ralph's is insufficient to fully display every book in Sweet, because Ralph's doesn't have First Enoch. So I can now add an other text, Charlesworth, and now as I switch to my pseudepigrapha, it switches to pseudepigrapha and then back. So you sort of see how that works. It works pretty well. It's pretty cool. Now we can have multi-corpus text. Where this really matters, and I didn't get a chance to prepare this text ahead of time, is our Ethiopic text that has a blend of biblical and pseudepigraphal and unique text of the Ethiopic corpus can now just be single module, which is pretty cool, but I didn't get a chance to show that off just yet. Okay, I'm going to pause right here. Any more questions come in, Mark?
Okay, let's see. Several of them. Trying to figure out which one. By the way, the feature you just showed, Brian Davidson says it's slander to call that a minor feature. This is huge.
Would you? Is it about the multiple text in one pane?
Yeah. Okay.
So, thank you, Brian.
And a related question. Let's see. Will it search across texts? For example, search across the Septuagint and the New Testament. He says, for now I'm using the Greek Bible, but it uses a different Septuagint.
So that's a really good question. This option here is purely visual. It does not search, and there are a lot of technical reasons why it gets very tricky, as in, if I'm combined, well, first of all, this only ever applies to your non-primary text, right? I'm only getting this combined text because I'm working in Sweet. So already this guy doesn't have a search box. And secondly, even if he did have a search box, and what word list would I be showing here? Would I be showing my Sweet words, my Ralph's words, my pseudepigrapha words? What if in this case I have different language and I start typing here and I type in A? Do I get an aleph or an alpha or an A, right? A lot of technical problems with that. So that's why A, as you notice, we have the Greek Bible. B, what I find is very handy though, is to go to the library and then you can make your own user group. So let's make a new group. Let's call it, actually this may crash because we've made a lot of under the hood improvements here and folders crash. Let's see here, can I add a folder? Yes, okay. Let's call it my Greek Bible, okay? And I'm gonna add Sweet. No, let's add Göttingen. Let's add Göttingen. Let's pretend we're big boy scholars. I'm gonna add Göttingen here. And where's my Göttingen pseudepigrapha? Or Pentateuch. In fact, I'll add all of them. Let's add 3 Göttingens to my Greek Bible. And let's say you don't like NH2, let's say you like UBS. So let's add UBS 5 here, okay? So now I've made my own Greek Bible I just made a user group, and then I used the right click to add user group. You can also do that to make the new one. I made my Greek Bible, okay? Now, all I have to do, anytime I want to do it, is I can right click a word that I want to analyze and do search and do research my Greek Bible. And you get not only all 3 texts searched, but you even get some decent analytics on them, such as a bar chart of which words are found. That is either combined or even split between UBS 5 and comparing that with my Septuagint. Now, you guys may not know about this research analytics. One of my favorite features, I say that because I wrote it, but I mean, it is one of my favorite features, and people don't use it as often. So if you make a user group, you can put whatever multi-text, as many texts as you want in there, and then with a simple right-click research, you can search it. By the way, I can also do that with live click. I can set my word usage, I'm going to turn off these ones, to be a custom group of text, my Greek Bible, and it'll do the exact same thing now with just a single click. I'll get my live click searching all the text that I put in there, and then I can even do analysis based on that. So either combined analytics or comparing the different ones, seeing how they work differently from each other. So you sort of see how those all work together, how it's not the same as having one text, but it is a pretty cool way that does really close, similar analysis of whatever multiple set of texts you want. Doesn't even have to be the same corpus. Hope that answers that question. Go ahead.
Yes, and a user's asking, can you, in the analysis results you were showing, can you double click on the results and get to the text in the analytics?
That's a good question. I think I can. Let's see here. Let's go to my pie chart again. I was on this. Let's see here. Don't know why this guy blinked out. Maybe because I'm messing with some things. Let's do a fresh search. And let's go to bar chart. Click to show results per text. You see that option here? So I can click to go to singular, and now it's breaking down my texts for the singular usage. Here they all were, and then click to open search results. You can click to get my 93 usage in UBS 5. So I think it's exactly what you're asking for.
Yep, I think so. If not, just ask us, and just elaborate on that.
Oh yeah, actually to elaborate briefly on that. So the only way, so what you saw me go to is I'm broken down my number, and first had to click on a breakdown, and then I got my list of modules. If you don't want to do that, you can always just switch from number to version. And version will just show for all the results, so you don't have to do that. So you can just go straight to the 77 here or whatever. So in case you're worried about that double click through or actually not getting all the results, because anyway, one other thing. Okay, next question. Mark, you there?
Sorry, my dogs are barking and I muted myself and forgot I did that.
Okay.
No, we have some questions, but they're related to things you've already covered. So if you want to go on, and we can just save these questions for the end.
The only other 2 features I'm going to mention as being new, and then we're basically at the end, we'll talk about those questions. The only other 2 features, I call them minor. I hope I don't make another grievous mistake for Brian Davidson for calling it minor. First one is we've added internal support for tutorials on both the construct and the set analysis display. So if you're the Accordance user that you're very comfortable doing basic searches up here, but you're always intimidated when you see this bad boy, right? You're like, whoa, I don't really want to mess with that. Now we can finally actually have some really cool live tutorials in here. In fact, I'll run one of them right here. We're like building a Hebrew or a simple construct search. So building a Hebrew construct search, it walks you through just like all the cool tutorials work and helps you. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Was it? Okay, press the return key to perform your search, et cetera, and then it'll actually end up going and working through and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you sort of see, we actually can now tutorial through the construct, both for doing syntax tutorials. Hey, I have no idea how to do a particular search in Homestead, ETCBC, or Anderson Forbes, or the Greek syntax, or our basic construct, or just all that together. Now the construct and the set analysis display have been tutorialized to come up with a word. What I mean by the set analysis display is right now I've done a basic search in ETCBC. If I open my basic analysis analytics, this isn't very useful, and hopefully this isn't new to you guys. If I want to get a breakdown, let's say of not just this lexical form, but see all the inflected forms, I can do that, right? Well, now we can actually show off, because this type of interaction we couldn't put in a tutorial just yet. Now we can, so now we can have tutorials that walk you through customizing this dialogue as well. So that's a pretty cool feature. And then the other minor feature, it's not minor, I'm sorry, that's actually very Anglo-centric of me, is that we've added a lot more localization. So for example, if I do a quick restart into Spanish, just bear with me for a second while it's restarting, then now we are localizing all the gloss forms. We're localizing the topics and the parallel pericopes. So here I'm now working with the program in Spanish. You can see my Spanish menus and interface elements and all that. And I can go to Spanish text as well. And let's go to LBLA, for example, right? And then if I pull open my info pane here, I'll see Spanish titles. I'll see Spanish topics, which we didn't have before. I'll see Spanish, if I go to like something that has other pericopes, like let's go to genealogy in Matthew, then I'll see my pericope list here. My genealogies are in Spanish. And most importantly, what I like is instant details now gives gloss forms. Go back to a tag text. Let me go to my RVR with Strongs. Then you can actually see at the bottom here that you see that the form we get out of Matthew here, so you actually get something useful, that all the glosses are in Spanish as well. So, and we have other languages that are working on. I think Spanish is the one that's most done, but all of our localizations are working on all this information. It's a lot of words, like thousands of different gloss forms to work through, but all the localizations, in case you don't use accordance in English, then those are gonna get more and more terms in that native language. Okay, I think that covers most of the features we're going to cover. I know it's been a lot. Trust me, there's way more under the hood stuff that we've done. This is a massive, massive update. We have, it looks like about 20 minutes left. Let me open up just for any questions that Mark's got about really anything in accordance.
Yeah, okay, so in no particular order with some of these questions, are there any plans to get accordance to run on Linux?
No, unfortunately, as much as I love Linux and the open source community, it's a massive amount of work to get everything sort of that's system specific, right? So to get a little technical from programming perspective, when I move the mouse, the system tracks where the mouse is and says, hey, now your mouse is here. Hey, now your mouse is here. Now your mouse is over this little control box. Well, all that system interaction is all platform specific. When I click and drag this scroll bar, that's specific to the Mac, and there's a Windows version. So we've spent a lot of effort creating those similar elements for Mac, for Windows, for iOS and Android, because those user bases support it. But I mean, as far as Linux users, I feel as though they're on the order of dozens, as in, 50 or less users that would ever actually use accordance on Linux. So it's really, really hard for us to justify the investment, because at the end of the day, we all do have to make a living. We're not just purely research funded by giant grants. So unfortunately, it's not been cost effective for us to make a Linux version just yet. The best thing I know is to try to use Wine. I know it's had a lot of problems. Hopefully new versions of Wine can solve that, or maybe we can make some minor efforts, but it's really hard for us to devote the significant amount of manpower needed to make a Linux version.
Okay, and I must have missed this because I was looking at some questions, but I think you might have had Spanish in the instant details in one of your examples. The question was, how do you turn that on?
So that is, again, that was actually one of the last features I just talked about, which is I switched to Spanish localization. So for those of you that don't know, this is a cool feature in Accordance. Accordance, by default, uses the default interface language. You see that right here? That means that it's going to match, and this is Mac and Windows, whatever your system is set to use, and iOS, and I'm not sure about Android. It'll use whatever your system's set to use. But let's say for some reason you want to be different. Maybe your system's in a language, but you actually want to keep Accordance in English. Or maybe your system is in English for different reasons, but you want to interact with Accordance in one of these languages. You can go to your Preferences, Appearance, Interface Language, and switch to it. And then after a quick restart, it'll come back in the new language. So if you are localized in Accordance and is not in English, one of the new features in 13.2 is we've added more that gets localized, including the gloss entries. So the gloss entries are the bolded entries. Here, even though I'm in an English text, you'll still get it. When I mouse over heavens, you see cielos there. Apologize for my Spanish accent, but that you can see that we've got Spanish glosses in here because I'm in a Spanish form. We're eventually going to be adding the other grammatical elements. Those have some other issues here. And of course, the rest of this just comes from my text. So if I'm in one of our Spanish translations that has Strong's numbers, I not only get the Spanish word I moused over, and the Hebrew element in the transliteration, and I get nice gloss in Spanish. So very, very handy, and this is going to be true for all of our languages as the localizations get finished. Spanish is the most complete, and I believe Korean is near behind it, and I forget the status of all the other ones, but we're working on it in all of our localizations. But since I speak English, I'm going to switch back to English while Mark's asking the next question.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, concerning the search feature, can you search stacks and notes and bookmarks and things like that?
You should be able to search anything that is displayed in accordance in its own thing. So bookmarks don't have a dedicated way to display them. So I don't think bookmarks get searched, and I'm honestly not really sure. Yeah, I guess you could search by the little snippet. I don't know of an element of a way to search by these ones, unfortunately. Stacks, that's actually a good question. Let's see here. Oh, I should add search for stack. That's a good idea. All right, I'll add search for stack. That should be very easy to do. Papers you can already search. Your notes you can already search. Either, actually, I don't even have any notes files here. Let's make new notes here. Webinar, and let's just add a little. I should have edited that. Let's just. Here we are, webinar, and then here are my notes, right? So you can, of course, search this, and it works. Or you can always open up the note by itself in its own dedicated tab and actually do an actual proper search by content right here. So that sort of works a little differently. But basically, the little find Command F works for any dedicated tab on the screen. I need to add that for stack, so thank you for pointing that out. And we need to figure out a way to search bookmarks because that sort of doesn't live in its own, in the same type of way. But generally, it works. It's the primary point of the feature is adding it for any text and any tool. But you're right, there are a couple other ways that we could also add that support.
Great. And you've mentioned this, but just to clarify, someone asked if the current release of Accordance will work on M1 chips.
Yes, it will. So basically what's going to happen is if you get a fresh M1 Mac from the App Store and you open up Accordance the first time, if you haven't done this before, it's going to say, hey, this old version of Accordance requires you to install Rosetta. It's free. Easy, it's not that big of a drain in your system, does require a little bit of internet download, whatever bandwidth in order to install it, and then it's done. And then Accordance will run under what's called the Rosetta 2 emulation layer. Now, you're never going to see that. Apple did a fantastic job hiding all that because of how different the architecture of M1 chips are, and I'm sure they'll come out with M2 and all that eventually, from the Intel chips that are powering most Macs now, right? So Apple does a great job hiding it. What it means for you is if an app isn't marked as universal, it'll just be a little bit slower. Now, the funny thing is, these M1 Macs are so incredibly fast and specialized, even running under emulation, my tiny dinky little Mac Mini is almost as fast as my fancy MacBook Pro. But when you're running the native 13.2, it like doubles in speed. It is 50% faster than my computer is right now, like just doing some basic search testing. Very, very impressive, very, very fast. I'm really excited about how fast it is. So yes, the old versions, even version, I don't want to say guarantee 12. I'm pretty sure 12 will even run fine on that. You're honestly going to run more of a Big Sur compatibility issue than an M1 compatibility issue. It'll just quietly run a little slower in emulation. If you get to 13.2 though, then it'll be universal, very fast, native architecture, run real well.
Okay, given that Apple's newly released iPad Pros include the M1 chip, the same as Apple's new computers, will the full desktop version of Accordance be forthcoming on the new iPad Pros?
So that's another good question, and really that's sort of in Apple's hands. While Apple's done the same chip there, they've yet to do the same operating system and the same, to use program speak, SDK, software development kit. As in, when I say I want a scroll bar, when I say I want a toolbar and menu bars, and these are things that generally don't really exist even on the fancy iPad OSs. As Apple brings more and more of them in, and then it makes sense that you're always working with the keyboard and always working with the mouse, then it really makes sense. Really, the funny thing is about the iOS version, it's the user interface that's blocking any new features more than anything else. It's not that it's not capable. It's not that the OS or the chip isn't good enough. It's just user interfaces have to be redesigned. Accordance is super duper optimized for mouse and keyboard. And we can't come out with an iPad version that forces you to have a mouse and keyboard, which you don't have anyway. We have really cool smart trackpad, Magic Trackpad support and that keyboard built in, but that's not a requirement. We have to be able to work as a touch app. So all the work, for example, of let's manage multiple tabs within a touch environment. Let's manage multiple zones within a touch environment. Let's pull up the construct and drag and drop within Bubble within a touch environment, and this dialog that comes down. These dialogues don't exist the same way on iPad. So all that has to be rebuilt. And that's one of the things where it's just, we got to prioritize what are the most useful things. So for now, I don't think it gains us anything, but if it lets Apple give a better window into it, then we'll definitely do that. So for example, Apple did the opposite, right? If you have an M1 Mac, you can go to the iOS App Store and download an iPad or iPhone app and run that on your M1 chip. If you really like those apps, and you can even do the Accordance app. That way works because generally mouse and keyboard can do more than a touch interface. But the opposite is an issue, so that's what I don't think they've opened it up yet. So that might have been more technical than what you're asking about, but that's my answer.
No, that's great. We've got some questions, I guess, concerning possible new features or enhancements. This question, this is a Mac feature question not being discussed yet, but I would like to mention this since I don't know if it'll come up. Will I be able to have more than 100 custom highlights with this version? I have maxed out at 100, so yeah.
Hi, I know exactly who you are from the forums, and thank you for your request here. We probably can solve that. The real difficulty with that is you're honestly the first user in the entire history of Accordance that I've ever met that uses that many highlights. And I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong. I love your systems that you've talked about, but 99.9% of our users are fine with 10 or fewer styles. So we've never run into this before. And while we can simply add more, it does involve other things of, hey, what do we handle? We handle this style list that now is, 300 different pages long. And do we have to add search functions? And it's really just interface ramifications that are blocking us from doing that, and I recognize how important it is, and I do know it's on our list to discuss, but I can't give a promised time.
Let's see. My iMac is on auto in appearance. When using Accordance, it changes to current light or dark. Is there a way to keep it on light mode?
Yes. So what you do is you go to your appearance preferences right here, and you turn off this checkbox. Automatically adjust the system dark mode. When this is on, you'll notice that my system is running light mode, so dark mode is not an option. If I turn this off, now I don't care what the system does, and I can pick light or dark. So since your choice is on, as a system is light, your Accordance will be light, and a system is dark, your Accordance will be dark, and you're just picking one of the different light themes here. If you turn this off, you can always use this theme regardless of whatever your system does.
Great. Another question, any plans to add the combined feature to tools, like ability to combine Barnes Notes, Old and New Testament?
That's already there. Yeah, that's already there. So I can add in parallel combined resources, Anchor Bible commentaries. So I have my Genesis to Deuteronomy there, Job through Song and all that. If Barnes Notes is missing, that's actually just a module correction that we'll have to post an update to so that they work. If it's a reference tool, if it's a lexicon, that of course doesn't make sense. But reference tools, it already supports it. It's just a matter of updating the text. If you notice any text that it should work and doesn't, then that's one thing, by the way, is to avoid an incredible, obnoxious set of options. For text, you can add any text, right? So I can have my Old Testament be Hebrew, and I can have my next to it, my New Testament filler be, I don't know, the Message, okay? So, and it'll work. Tools, there are just simply too many options. It gets too crazy. So tools have to be pre-baked into the tool when you download it. What it's compatible with here, you see Anchor only is compatible with Anchor, so you can't put Anchor next to, let's say, Baker, for example. It's just something that doesn't make any sense. So it only works with itself, and that's something you have to put into a module, or we put out some updates and do that. So anyway, go ahead and tell us if you find some tools that should work together and don't.
Great. We have a couple almost brand new users who are still struggling with finding out how to get Accordance to work. Could you just go over some of the options for new users that are trying to figure things out?
Yeah, so the 30-second introduction to accordance is accordance, everything is a search. And I took that from David, who's one of our great trainers, where you open something from your library, and at the top, you're going to get your search box like you're used to, and you type whatever you want. I want to view Genesis, I get Genesis. I want to search for Adam, I get Adam. And you can then configure your options, and we have this idea of a WYSIWYG where you can generally see all of the details of your search. I searched the ESV for a word called Adam, and it gave me 21 results, and then I'm displaying all the results here. If you want them in parallel, use this add parallel. And then that's a basic idea, and that idea works for tools, that idea works for some dedicated notes and pay, and all sorts of other parts of research, all the same idea. Now, getting beyond that, there are obviously hundreds of features and takes a long time to learn it. So the two things I would recommend for training are, number one, we do run webinars like this very one that get you acquainted with accordance. Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we do a accordance 101 type webinars, getting you comfortable with just navigating the program. How does it all work? How do I search? How do I get from point A to point B? Number
Absolutely.
two.
I was going to say, we have webinars that are very basic and very advanced all through the week. So a basic user can almost be assured there's going to be a basic one for them every week.
Yeah, so I highly recommend you check that out. And if you want to know how to find them, just go to the help page in your accordance program and go to webinars, and you'll get to the list of them. In fact, I think it'll pull up right here, and you'll see all the latest webinars. And then we can see right here, either Western or Eastern from a time zone perspective, what makes sense to my time. So I can click on Western and immediately see what's coming up, right? So very handy webinars. Okay, second thing is, if you're running version 13, which I highly, highly recommend it, it's like $20-something to upgrade, and it's all sorts of features. It includes a feature called tutorials. Those are available in the help menu. They're also available in your toolbar here. And a tutorial walks you through step by step how to do anything in accordance that we've documented. So if you're brand new, go to Easy Tutorial, and it'll say Opening Books. And then just take your time. This tutorial will show you how to open your accordance books. First, open the library. How to open the library. You can do the library. If you don't know how to do it, you can always press Do It For Me. Or once you do the step, it knows it goes to the next thing. Your accordance library is a bunch of different kinds of resources. Continue. So if you take your time and work through the tutorials, it walks you through the actions. And at any point, you can restart your tutorial. At any point, you can stop your tutorial and play around with whatever session it's set up, it's done, in case you want to see better how it works before, or then just run your tutorial again. So I highly recommend you walk the tutorial and you see how many there are. I mean, they're like 100-something tutorials, 60-something, I don't know, we have a lot, and we're adding more most releases here of just covering so many different ways of how can I use live click better? What did Joel mean by triple click? How do I use search commands because I want to find two words together? Really, really great things that, excuse me, that walk you through your accordance installation on your computer with whatever text you have installed. Highly, highly recommend that as the next best thing. So if you use that combined with webinars, that's one of the best ways to get into it.
Okay, I've literally had 4 or 5 people asking, is there ever going to be an easy way to navigate book, chapter, verse like iOS has in the desktop version of Accordance?
Ever is such a long word that the chances that I say yes are very, very likely. At some point in the future, absolutely it will be. I can't promise when, but absolutely that is something that at some point in the future we can add. It's not something that's technically hard. It's just this is one of those where it is so easy to type something in or use your arrow keys. We've just never found it that, boy, we really, really need that person who can never use their key. And I know everybody has their own search style, and I certainly understand that everyone has their own way of getting between it, and I definitely recognize the nice advantages of the touch-friendly table contents. It is definitely on our back list, but as usual, I can't give it time.
As long as we're talking about things that you're not going to give a time frame for, any idea about if Timeline or the Atlas are coming to iOS?
Absolutely, I want them to be. So absolutely, I'd like them to be there, and there's no reason they can't be there. It's just a matter of being able to finish the programming effort and put them on there. I think that they're fantastic tools, and I'd love to see them fully implemented on iOS. So if we're up to me, they'd be soon, but I mean, I also have a million other responsibilities and a lot of other developers to work with and everything else. So that's why I can't give a time, but absolutely, I want Timeline Atlas on iOS and Android.
All right, and I think I've covered everybody's questions. If I missed your question, please type it in really quickly. But a lot of people saying thank you for this. Okay, Florence is asking, any chance we'll have an audio search where you could just speak to your computer and it would search for something that you're looking for?
Well,
I guess that's an accessibility sort of feature.
You can already do that. See here. I don't have it set up here. I think you can set up system input where if you double press the function key, then it'll enter text here, and I'm pretty sure that works. I just have it disabled. So I'm pretty positive that that already works, where if you hit tab, put your entry up here and then do FN and then enter, you can do it. But again, you still have to do that. And I know that they're also sort of dragon, whatever, those are the type of interfaces where you can use your words to talk about it. As far as Accordance actually being a fully accessible program for the visually impaired, that we're still working on. And if you are one of those users, I apologize, because I know you've heard that for probably a decade, but there are a lot of reasons why it's very, very difficult to make a good, very complicated app sufficiently accessible. So that we are still unfortunately working on.
All right. Thank you. Will BHS poetry, will our Hebrew text be formatted with poetry formatting?
I believe that is a publisher choice, as in our HMT text, and I think also the ETCBC. I don't think any of those had poetry in them. So we don't put those in the text because they simply weren't in there. Definitely someone should correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that whatever text we get from the developers, so Westminster here, ETCBC, Anderson Forbes, I don't think any of these have poetry in the file, so that's why we don't try to add it to the text. I could be wrong, so if you're sure one of those databases has poetry, then there may be something we need to add for that. But I'm pretty sure that we never got that information. This was simply not there.
And that would be a module development issue and not a programmatic kind of thing anyway. So we could do that without having to upgrade Accordance, I guess is what I'm saying.